My name is Eli Ranger Harrow, and I'm from Wexford County, Michigan. For most of my adult life, the forest has been my home. I was a ranger, trained to recognize every footprint, every call, every shadow that moved between the pines. I knew the bears. I knew the wolves. I even knew the poachers who thought they could outsmart me. But nothing could prepare me for what I met out there. And yet, here I am, alive, speaking these words to you. But don't mistake my survival for victory. I didn't beat it. I didn't outsmart it. Truth is, I don't think it ever truly wanted to kill me. I think it let me walk out of those woods, broken, trembling, and scarred, because it chose to. I can still feel its breath against my neck. It was hot, heavy, and staggered, as though it had just finished running. Except I never heard it run. I only heard the quiet crunch of leaves behind me, the occasional snap of a twig that froze me mid-step. It wasn't charging. It wasn't flailing like some dumb animal. It was studying me, tracking me. And in that moment, when I should have been just another story lost to the trees, it stopped. It let me see it, clearly, terrifyingly, and then it let me go. To this day, I don't know why. Sometimes I wish it had finished me, because living with what I saw has been harder than dying in those woods could ever have been. Every night, when the wind presses against my cabin windows, I hear it. Every morning, when the mist curls low to the ground, I see its shape waiting there, just out of reach. This isn't one of those campfire tales where someone swears they saw a shadow, screamed, and bolted into the night. Number. What happened to me was drawn out, precise. It was personal. And I think that's what makes this story the hardest to tell. Then, absolute silence. That silence is what wakes me up at 3 a.m., because silence in the forest doesn't mean safety. Silence means the forest is holding its breath, waiting for something else to speak. And it always did. So before I go any further, hear me clearly. What you're about to witness is not rumor. It's not a tall tale told by drunks at a bar. It was supposed to be routine, just another weekend in the woods, something I had done 100 times before. I'd packed light, rations, gear, my old rifle. I'd even told a couple of buddies I'd be camping past the fire roads, maybe tracking deer. One of them, Kyle, almost came along, but he bailed last minute. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if he hadn't. When I stopped for gas in town, I noticed the way people looked at me when I mentioned where I was headed. An older man at the counter didn't laugh, didn't say much. He just shook his head and muttered, "Don't go past the fire roads at night." His voice was low, like he didn't want anyone else to hear him. Another woman, waiting by the register, cut her eyes toward me and asked, "You going alone?" I smiled it off. I thought maybe it was local superstition, one of those warnings small towns hold on to like heirlooms. I'd heard versions before, tales about coyotes bigger than normal, shadows that weren't supposed to move. It all sounded like folklore. By the time I reached the clearing, the sun was already sagging against the tree line. I set up camp like always, fire pit first, then tent, then a sweep of the area. I wasn't nervous, not yet. Everything felt normal, but it didn't stay that way. I'd always thought I knew the pulse of the forest, the constant background hum, crickets ticking away in the brush, the soft, throaty songs of tree frogs, birds scolding each other overhead, and the distant rustle of deer working their way through leaves. That night, though, the woods felt hollow. No crickets, no frogs, not a single owl, just silence. And in a way, that silence pressed harder on me than any growl or howl could have. Because the woods never stop talking, not unless something tells them to. I walked the edge of the clearing, shining my flashlight across the trees. Nothing moved, not even a moth circled the beam. The air was heavy, like even the insects had learned to stay out of it. I told myself it was the season, that maybe the chill had driven everything deeper into the brush. Still, The hair on my arms refused to settle. Every step crunched louder than it should have, echoing back at me, as though... By the next morning, the silence had deepened. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was like the woods themselves had shifted. The air was thicker, the colors muted. The normal greens of the forest floor looked gray, like someone had drained the life out of them overnight. I decided to hike further out from camp, nothing unusual for me. I've tracked bear, moose, even the occasional escaped cow that wandered too far from a farm. But a mile and a half out, along a fire road that hadn't been used in years, I saw something that stopped me cold. On the trunk of a massive white pine were claw marks, deep and deliberate. Not scratches, not bark stripped for sap. Marks. They ran straight up, 4, maybe 5 rakes, each an inch thick, and the highest was at least 9 feet off the ground. I remember staring at them, running my palm over the grooves. A bear can stand up, sure, but even a grizzly would have trouble reaching that height, and we don't have grizzlies in Michigan. My gut told me to leave it alone, but my training told me to keep investigating, so I went deeper. That's when I found the deer. Half of it. The front half of a whitetail buck lay collapsed in the underbrush. No scavenger marks, no drag trail, just the front portion, head, neck, shoulders, mangled but placed almost neatly, like it had been set there. Its back half was gone. Above me, in the low branches, something glistened. I lifted my eyes and froze. The intestines. They weren't just thrown. They were strung, draped across the branches like some grotesque decoration. Loops, twists, deliberate. Nothing in nature does that. Not wolves, not cats, not even people I know of. A smell hit me then. A coppery, sweet rot mixed with wet fur. I stumbled back, gagging, and that's when I heard it. Crack. A single stick breaking somewhere behind me. I spun, rifle half raised. Nothing but trees. The forest had gone silent again. I backed away, careful, slow. Every step felt like stepping on glass. By the time I returned to camp, the sun was sinking. My fire was still out, my gear untouched, but something in the air had changed. That night, I don't know how much time passed after those footsteps faded. Minutes, maybe an hour. I sat frozen in the tent, clutching the recorder, rifle across my lap. At some point, the fire I'd built earlier had burned itself out, leaving only a faint orange glow against the canvas. That glow was the only thing keeping me tethered, the only thing separating me from total black. But then, even that began to fade. I didn't hear twigs snapping this time, no leaves crunching, just a shift. The feeling of something arriving at the edge of the clearing. I unzipped the tent flap just enough to see through the gap. My hand shook so hard the teeth of the zipper rattled. I pressed my eye to the slit, and that's when I saw it. Not a shadow, not a trick of the dark. It was there. Standing at the tree line, half hidden in what little light remained, was a shape that didn't belong. Too tall, too thin. Its arms dangled lower than they should have, long enough that its claws nearly brushed its knees. The chest rose and fell in ragged bursts, like it had just finished running a marathon, like every breath it took was scraping its throat raw. Its jaw. God, I'll never forget that jaw. It hung crooked, slacked like it had been broken and never set right. But when it grinned, when those teeth pulled back, it wasn't just a jaw moving. The teeth themselves seemed to flex, to shift in their sockets, almost independent of the mouth that held them. And the eyes. They weren't glowing like a wolf's, not reflecting light. They were shining from inside, like there was a fire burning deep in the sockets. Orange, pulsing, alive. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My entire body locked into place, as though it had rooted me into the dirt. It didn't charge, didn't growl, didn't even blink. It just watched. For minutes that felt like hours, it stood there, chest heaving, jaw open, those eyes drilling into me. The woods around us held that impossible silence, the kind that presses on your eardrums until you start to hear your own blood moving. And then, it tilted its head. Not smoothly, not like you or me. It jerked, a twitching tilt, stopping and starting, like a I don't remember making the decision to move. One moment I was locked there, eye pressed to the slit of the tent, and the next I was grabbing the rifle, throwing myself out into the cold night air. My legs carried me before my mind could catch up. I bolted. Branches clawed at my arms. Roots tried to take my feet out from under me, but I just ran. I didn't care which direction, just away. Away from that clearing, away from those eyes. At first there was nothing behind me. No pursuit. No heavy footsteps shaking the earth. For a fleeting second, I thought maybe it wasn't going to follow. Then I heard it. Snap. A twig breaking. Not the accidental crack of a deer bounding off. This was deliberate, sharp, too close. Another step, another snap. It wasn't chasing, it was following, keeping itself just out of sight, just far enough that I couldn't see it, only hear it. Every few strides, another deliberate crunch. It wanted me to know it was there. It wanted me to keep running, to burn myself out. I pushed harder, lungs tearing, throat raw. But the forest stretched on like a labyrinth. No matter how far I ran, I kept coming across the same landmarks. An old fallen oak, a patch of moss glowing pale in the moonlight, the same crooked birch. It didn't make sense. I wasn't escaping. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't lost. I was being herded. I broke into a clearing and froze dead in my tracks. They were everywhere. Carcasses, deer, raccoons, even what looked like the remnants of a black bear. All hung from low branches, strung up like grotesque warnings. Their bodies swayed gently in the night breeze, eyes glassy, limbs twisted at impossible angles. The stench hit me all at once. Rot, iron, wet fur, all baking in the cold. I staggered backward, gagging. That's when the sound stopped. No more snapping twigs, no more following steps, just silence again. And then it stepped into the moonlight. I saw it in full for the first time. Its body was gaunt, all tendon and bone beneath matted fur. The arms were too long, claws dragging as it walked. But what froze me wasn't the size. It wasn't even the fire burning in those eyes. It was the red. Its paws, both of them, were stained, dark, wet. I shut my eyes, waiting for claws, for teeth, for the end, but it didn't come. I don't know what snapped inside me. Maybe it was the pressure of its breath on my skin, or the heat of those eyes inches from mine. Maybe it was just raw survival screaming through my muscles. But suddenly, I wasn't frozen anymore. My hand darted to the fire pit beside me, still glowing with a few weak embers from earlier. Without thinking, without aiming, I grabbed the heaviest, hottest log and swung it up between us. "Get away!" My own voice didn't even sound human. It cracked, raw, almost feral. Sparks sprayed as I hurled the burning log at its chest. The log struck, embers exploding across its fur. It didn't yelp, didn't flinch. It just rocked back a fraction, tilting its head as if I'd done something curious rather than threatening. I didn't wait to see more. I turned and ran. My boots tore through the underbrush. My lungs burned. Branches whipped my face and arms, but I kept running, weaving between the pines. I didn't dare look back. Every cell in my body was sure it was behind me, ready to strike the second I slowed. But it never came. No footfalls, no growl, no breath. Just my own ragged gasps and the hammer of my heart. I ran until the sky began to pale, until the black bled into a washed-out gray, and the birds finally dared to start singing again. Only then did I see the edge of the service road. My truck was there, sitting alone where I'd left it, dew beating on the windshield. I nearly dropped the keys twice trying to jam them into the ignition. My hands were trembling so hard I couldn't control them. When the engine finally turned over, the sound of it almost made me cry. I slammed it into gear and tore down the gravel road, tires spitting rocks, eyes flicking between the wheel and the rearview mirror. For miles, nothing but trees and empty road. Then, as the sun broke the horizon, I saw it. At the tree line, just before the road curved out of sight, it was standing, upright, motionless, watching me. Its chest rose slowly, steadily. Its crooked jaw hung loose, the glint of its eyes muted now in daylight, but still alive, still fixed on me. It didn't step forward. I made it out of those woods, but I didn't leave what happened there behind. You don't walk away from something like that. It walks away with you. The first thing I noticed was the animals. My neighbor's dog, a mutt that used to sprint across the yard to greet me, now won't come within 20 feet. Hackles raised, teeth bared, like I'm something it's never seen before. Even strays avoid me. Cats vanish the moment I step near. It's as if they smell something I can't wash off. Then there are the mornings. I wake up with soil packed under my fingernails, streaked across my sheets. But I don't sleepwalk. I don't leave the house. At least, not that I remember. And the nights are the worst. Sometimes, in the dead quiet, I'll hear it. Not the howl of a coyote, not the cry of an owl. Scratching at my window. Slow, deliberate. A steady rasp, in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. Every drag of claw against glass sinking with the thud inside my chest. I don't open the blinds. I don't dare, because I know what I'll see. The truth? I didn't survive the dogman. I walked out of those woods breathing, sure, but I wasn't spared. I was marked. And one day, it's coming back to finish.